My name is Sam Jenks, and welcome to another episode of The Way We Source, a podcast hosted by Kodiak Hub, where we share our talks with procurement practitioners, leaders, experts, consultants, content gurus, and people that we find downright inspiring, diving into the role that sourcing and procurement plays in the way that we live. If you like today's episode, make sure to rate the program and give us a follow. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting a practitioner with a capital P. During his 20 years in procurement at businesses such as Thomson Reuters, Refinitiv, and now Telia, he brings today's episode a broad and diversified experience from multiple industries with expertise in strategic sourcing, supply chain, shared services, and procurement leadership. He's a passionate procurement leader, currently serving as the Chief Procurement and Supply Chain Officer at Telia, Mr. Nicolas Passaquin. Nicolas, welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks, Sam, for the introduction.
Nicolas, I want to start with a softball question. We ask a lot of our guests here. What does sourcing and procurement mean to someone like you that's spent the majority, if not all of your career in the space?
I think there's several ways to answer that. One is a simpler one is we are here to ensure the right goods and services are acquired at the best possible cost. Now, that's a simplified version that I get to students when we talk about procurement or sourcing and what does it mean. Now, to develop a little bit, I think for me, it's really one of those strategic functions that really drive value and efficiency. I think for me, we are really integral to maintain competitive advantage and operational excellence, leveraging the world out there, basically all of the suppliers network and all of the insights we could get from them.
I think that procurement has had kind of this, how would I say, a feeling that they've been done wrong by traditionally, right? That they're not so quote unquote strategic as you just put that the role is. What do you think that as a leader you need to do to make sure that procurement is seen as a strategic function and not more an operational order taker?
To be fair, I think it starts by being an operational function. I think we should never forget the foundation. We are there to make sure that we actually transact with the external world, with suppliers in a structured way, mitigating risk, optimizing costs. So I think the first things we should be doing is really doing that well. That's one. Then after that, it's really about how could we be the right business challengers. By that, I mean using external insights, using supplier innovation, leveraging our wide network within the organization to build additional value, to be able then to help the company leverage the scale of the spend of the company and leverage the scale of what's out there, basically. So it's really about that, aligning ourselves to what the business needs and wants and the vision and strategy of the organization and leveraging the external network of partners, suppliers we have to create more value than people dealing in isolation with suppliers by themselves, basically.
Now, leveraging that supplier network, leveraging your spend and volume at scale, I'm sure that it differs in the businesses that you worked in, right? You've worked in a diversified space, different spaces, Thomson Reuters, Refinitiv, and Telia, businesses that are at different scale, potentially at different maturities in procurement and supply chain. How would you say that it differs when, for example, one business, Thomson Reuters, to where you are today?
I think the main thing that differs is what the business is actually focusing on, what's actually the business case that's behind why customers are buying from us. In Thomson Reuters, it was definitely the quality of the content, so the content acquisition, how do we integrate, ingest, manipulate that content so it actually creates the right software and environment and information for our stakeholders, for our suppliers, and for our customers. So really what sourcing or procurement was supposed to do is actually making sure that we actually create a value chain around that, around how do we acquire content and how do we drive revenue from that content. Right. And in between, you've got a number of technology firms. At the time, we were already talking quite long ago about AI, automation, rule-based machine learnings, long before it became the hype, because for us, it was actually fundamental to the business success. And I think in Telia, it's definitely a different world. In telecom, the success comes from something else, comes from 5G networks, from the quality of the infrastructure, from actually how do we as well use supplier customers' data for helping them to make a decision in their own life, because we do as well some other element than just providing mobile connection. But I think what makes a business makes a difference on what you are focusing on as a procurement individual.
Fantastic insights. Now, you've been in the space, like I said, for 20 years or just thereabouts. I'm sure that you've seen a big shift in the way that procurement as a function has evolved. What are, if you could boil it down to one or two big things that you're seeing in the space, how has the profession evolved in the last 20 years that you've been in it?
I think I definitely see us as being a lot more strategic and less transactional. Right. Despite what I said earlier, we are, we need anyway, we definitely moved away from that role, even though I think it's still important, fundamentally, it needs to be happening. But I think it happens now a lot more with technology. And then we can focus our brains onto things which would be adding more value to an organization. And that probably comes to my second point then. Definitely the technology changed significantly what we do, how we do it. We have a lot more automation, simplification that are allowed by and supported by technology that we had in the past. So that's the second thing that definitely changed. And the third thing is probably the increased focus on sustainability and ethical sourcing. We were talking a little bit about that years before, but I think now we are definitely in a different environment, and that's something that's shape as well the way we are interacting with the market, the way we are recruiting, and the way we are behaving as companies.
Why do you think that procurement is so pivotal in the sustainable kind of initiatives that businesses are taking on?
Because a lot of the decisions we are taking as procurement or we are facilitating are actually having impact both on the sustainability and the ethical aspect of the relationship that the organization is maintaining. If you look at our pure core business, I think it's within our own worlds. Yes, sustainability is important and we need to do the right things, but then a lot of the touch point or other triggers are actually external parties, and how we interact with them, how do we select them, where do we buy, and how do we buy from. So that's why it's important. And that's focusing on the sourcing angle. Then, as you said, I'm both chief procurement and supply chain officer. In the supply chain space, it's even more prevalent. We actually work with a lot of companies externally, and we want them to be actually behaving in the way which are sustainable. So we encourage them. We often as well pay slightly more to have them having a different approach to sustainability within the supply chain they put together for us. And then there is the entire circularity as well, refurbishment, second hand, that we do support both as a sourcing and supply chain organization. So all of that makes us actually a pivotal function for sustainability and ethics.
You said it there. You're willing to be able to pay a premium, right, to make sure that you're working with a vendor that can give you quality goods with a sustainable, outlook, right? Ethically sourced and or produced with people and the planet in mind. What is the business case you make internally, though, to source sustainably, right? Because so many procurement professionals are talking about this, and they have to own it, but at the same time, you have to own managing savings and creating cost reductions. So where does that balance come into play?
Yeah, and I shouldn't have said that so loud. If suppliers are definitely listening, they might actually take that as an opportunity.
Yeah. You're gonna be getting contacted by a lot of business development representatives after this. I'm sure. Yes.
No, but joke apart, I think it's actually a business differentiator as well. I think our customers are asking for more sustainable solutions, so we are using that beyond brand and marketing as well to actually sell that as a value add. If you're actually a customer of us, you know that we are supporting green energy. We are engaging with certain type of suppliers. We are actually facilitating digital inclusion of people who are struggling with that. So I think there's definitely a business case behind in terms of revenue growth. So yes, sometimes you might have a cost, but in reality, it will drive additional revenue that would offset those costs quite often. So the business case is firstly based on that, really.
Very interesting. You mentioned a phrase there that I don't know if all of our listeners are familiar with. Digital inclusion. What does that mean?
It's actually mean that Telia as a business is supporting the people who are struggling with digitalization. So our customers, helping them actually to get on board with smartphones, how to use it. And the Nordic environment is extremely digitalized. You have things like Bank ID, which is like a software you use to transact, to do almost everything in your day-to-day life. And we are actually helping senior people, but not only, to actually use that. We train them. We've got dedicated hotline for them to come and ask questions, or physically into stores. So we invest into being socially responsible as well.
Such cool initiatives, and I think that that's also the value of where procurement can be able to go beyond, right? As a business partner, for sure. Okay, you've been a leader for the majority of your career, or at least the latter half of your career now. As a procurement leader, what do you look for when you hire new talent into your team?
I look first to what I have already. I think diversity is pretty important. It's important actually to bring people who are coming from different industry, different perspective, different culture. So they would actually bring something different to the table. So that's definitely something I would really look for, is someone who is different. And that's really talking more about that soft skill, that attitude, that behavior that they can bring in their role. Now, obviously, you look at industry expertise, procurement expertise, so some of the fundamental that is actually needed to be able to be a procurement person. Now, there's a lot of things you can learn, and the hard skill, generally, you can learn it. And that's why I started by saying what I want is diversity, soft skill, attitude, behaviors, because I can teach you negotiation skill. I can't teach you some of those elements, basically. So that's a balance in between those two that I would really be looking for.
Now, the soft skills are super important because, again, like you said, they're hard to teach. I think that as a sales leader, I feel the same way, and we're two sides of the same coin in a lot of ways, right? When it comes down to it, what are some of the tactical skills that you feel like in 2025 that need to be most front and center, right? Is it negotiation? Is it technical skills? What is it?
I think we would be looking really at three things probably. The sort of data analytics and digital literacy is definitely one which is important. The third one, I think you did mention that the understanding of negotiation, how to build win-win negotiations, how do you frame negotiation and do that, it's still fundamental. And probably the last one is more the sort of adaptability, is how do you actually strive in an environment which are constantly evolving? How are you going to learn? How are you going to be developing yourself joining us? So those three things are really the sort of tactical things I would be looking for.
When it comes to, because I mean, like, I think that a lot of organizations are looking for, representatives of their business or individual contributors that are coming in, right, to have this kind of skill of data and some technical literacy, right? Obviously, like we see it, there's transformations of the procure tech stack. Data and information is abundant within procurement. It's important that doesn't just, as I saw a great video from a DPW talk, just become exhaust, right? Get let out in the world and never come back to you. It needs to serve as insights, right? And that literacy is so important to make that true. When it comes to your team, I mean, what specifically are you talking about when you talk about kind of the data savviness, the technical literacy? Do you have some examples, some concrete ones?
I think there is a very concrete one, actually. Just look first at spend analytics. I think that ability to understand how the data comes together, where it sits, how you get the right level of granularity, what's actually is even a data lake, why are we building that, and why do they have actually different answers depending on how they are filtering the data. So I think that sort of data analysis capability and understanding of how it's framed, how it comes from ERP data into the end product that we use today, which for us is ClickSense, but could be Power BI or any other. I think is all the relationship they need to understand, because that's sort of fundamental to doing a proper sourcing or procurement role. So that's an example that would be very specific to an area. And that would be actually fundamental probably for 90% of our sourcing manager today to understand that.
Perfect example. Thanks for sharing that as well. Now, when it comes to your role as a strategic leader, how do you remain close to the operational activities in the business? I assume that you're leading a team of at least over 25, if not over 50 individuals, maybe even more. How do you stay close to the pulse?
So I lead a team of about 250 people.
Oh, there you go. Apologies for scaling down your responsibilities there.
But to be fair, I don't think it matters that much. I think there is as well a stage where you actually need to be able to engage into different level of organization. So for me, I'm quite passionate about building relationship with people, and that start and then there basically is I'm trying to make myself available to have regular check-in at all level within my team, actually talk about what they are currently working on, what's on their mind. I'm having a 100% open door policy. People know they can ping me, ask questions, come with their challenges. And what's valid actually for my organization is valid as well for my stakeholders. So I've got definitely leadership team who are working with their own set of stakeholders. I've got mine as well at the executive level, and I'm going to them regularly, asking questions, pinging them. And beyond sourcing and supply chain, just talking about the businesses where they're focused on what they're worried about, where could we be helping them. So I think it's just maintaining all those connection points with our organization internally with our stakeholders. And there's obviously the supplier element to that. I'm trying to participate to executive business review regularly. I know some of our suppliers more because I've transacted with them in the past, so I have regular check-in with them. So it's really investing time to talk to people. That's what makes the difference.
Now, a super practical question, just because I'm always fascinated. I think a lot of our listeners are. Wow, as a chief procurement and supply chain officer, what does your exec team look like? I mean, what's that build up and makeup look like? Is it category steered? I'm just curious on that point.
It is category steered. So I definitely have a lot of categories that are within my organization. Then I've got a center of excellence, which actually where you have sourcing process, system transformation, strategic projects. We've got a risk and sustainability team we are working with as well. But it's actually a lot of the execution goes from the category teams. And then we've got two other teams, one which is more an agile procurement organization, so they support any category where there is actually overflow when they have projects they could not be delivering. So they are a bit more rounded sourcing manager that can take on any kind of projects. So that would be as well one more. And then there's supply chain, obviously, which then is a lot more operational, and it's really about getting a phone in the hand of the customers. So that's how I've got it structured.
Fantastic insights and probably good direction for somebody out there that's listening, looking to reform and or build their own leadership organization or structure for their procurement organization. On the topic of the Center of Excellence, was the Center of Excellence in place when you started at Telia, or was this something that you've put into place?
I actually joined to build that Center of Excellence.
Okay, very exciting.
I actually joined Telia in a transformation role. So my role initially was to build that up. I came for doing organizational design, transformation, strategy project, and build actually a more fit for purpose organization. And one of the main things was to create that Center of Excellence.
Can a procurement organization function today without one?
Well, you can always. I think it would be suboptimal. I think
say
definitely
a procurement organization that's managing a level of spend like Telia. Can you technically really operate to their full capability without one? Do you believe?
No, I don't think you can. I think definitely you'd be missing a lot of opportunities, and then you'd be actually blind to what should be coming next. So definitely, if you want to keep building your maturity, if you want to be in that transformation journey, and transformation is never ending. So new technology are coming up. You need to train people. Yep. You have M&A, divestiture, acquisition coming up. So all of that is done by a Center of Excellence. So I think it would be very difficult to do without.
Yeah. No, I as a sales leader without our RevOps, I think that I would feel the exact same way, and that's really the excellence center in our business that's able to deliver value to me and my team to go to market. So I totally am aligned with that. When it comes to your career, looking back, if you were talking to a young you, right, just starting out, Nicolas Passaquin, starting, what are you going to give him as a tip at his first job?
I think probably embrace continuous learning. Stay curious. Ask questions. Listen carefully to the answers. Then ask more questions. It's really that learning journey that makes a difference. It's really building up your knowledge is actually critical for success. That's one. The second one is probably the build a strong network within your organization and outside as well. network with your peers, with people above you. So definitely that would be one more thing I would tell. And the third one is probably really focusing on developing both technical and soft skills. Is really when you embrace learning, especially early on, you tend to focus a lot about category management, negotiations, and things which would be hard skill. But don't forget that you need actually to wider your view as well to understand what businesses are about, where revenue is coming from, how do you drive EBITDA, what those terms, by the way, means. And I think you need to keep widening actually your understanding of the industry, of how the economy works. So I think all of that is important for me. That's probably what I would be saying.
Yeah, for sure. As a leader, when you're trying to create and develop upon your network, what are some of the practical ways that you're doing that?
I think I do that through multiple ways. So one is I am authoring books. So I wrote 2 books on procurement. I write article every other week on LinkedIn as well. So I'm trying to engage people around saying, well, that's what I have to say about our function. That's my knowledge. That's my expertise. But generally, I and all of those by saying, well, connect, talk to me, and then we can exchange on that. So I've created actually a lot of touch points with people who were completely outside of my original network. So I've got actually a wide exposure for that. Then I am the co-chairman and co-founder of a procurement network back in Switzerland, but I'm still part of that and leading that, where it's basically CPOs or procurement leaders from different industry, and we are meeting we are meeting once a month, actually, every Friday morning, talking about what's on our mind, exchanging on strategy, on recruitment, on categories sometimes. So we just define what should be the right thing. So that's another one. And then the third one is it's more external exposure. It's conferences, it's meetings, it's webinars. You always actually meet new people, learn a lot. And then if you see something interesting, whether it's an article, a presentation, a webinar, just go and talk to the people, ask questions. Quite often they'd be very pleased talking to you. And then it's just learning more and developing yourself.
Yeah, it's that 80-20 split, right? Of continuously trying to grow, staying curious, making sure that you're doing the things that push the boundary of the role. I think it's important. You don't forget it as well.
Yeah, and one thing you said, which is right, it's 80-20, but there is as well definitely an element of applying what you learn, applying what you heard. It's like you need to keep in mind, especially when you become a leader, to say, well, that's what I've heard. Well, how applicable is it within my own environment? Should I try that? Should I actually mix it with something else I heard, and then build your journey with that external input as well? So you don't learn only for your own sake, but you learn for bringing it into your organization.
Yeah, it's a great point. Great point. And I think that's what goes back to what you were talking about, right? Be curious, ask questions, learn, and then, for example, ask more questions, right? Because that's the active listening piece that's then bringing it back into your org, right? When it comes to the maturity of a business, I mean, how is it that you go about, especially as an interim leader coming into an organization and making sure that you're kind of gauging things so that you're not coming in and making change happen before, of course, it's ready for those changes, or what changes you need to make? How do you go about gauging the maturity of a business?
I think it's definitely by conducting a detailed assessment of the current process, current performance. So go and look at it into a very structured way. Just go through process, system, people. What are you focusing on? How are you delivering? So go through, I was going to say a checklist, but that's really what it is. First with your team, then with your key stakeholders to understand how they perceive the organization, what the pain points, do they see opportunities?
If I may, double click on that. It's just that you really interest me. I mean, if you were to create a checklist, maybe you don't have it in front of you, right? But I mean, as Steve Middleton, one of the guys in my sales team, always says, and he's fantastic with this. A pilot doesn't fly the plane without going through his checklist, right? To make sure that everything's switched on correctly and every check has been made. I mean, what is that checklist that you would be going through? If you and you maybe don't have, like I said, concrete down to the point, but what are some of the elements that you would be hitting on there?
And I definitely do have that. I think I've built that back in Thomson Reuters day, and I keep enhancing it. But I definitely have that checklist covering, process, people, and systems, basically, and looking at those three, how they interact. I've got about 150 different questions with different level of maturity, going through what are the policy? What are the standard contract terms? Does it even exist? Is there legal support to actually what are KPI in place? Do we measure cost reduction? How do we link that to finance? What's the structure of the team? What's the average length into the organization? Where do people come from? So I've got like a long list of things which I would go through in a very structured way, very organized manner to say, and at the end, just to pinpoint area where I think there is a lack of maturity first. And then the second thing you want to look at is where should I be focusing my time? What would actually make a difference? Quick wins first, but then more longer term as well. So the initial assessment is critical to do. And then, I would definitely encourage that long list of questions you can build based on your experience. Then from there to say, what's the focus first, quick wins, and then what's the focus mid to longer term, and then build that up.
Super tactical insights. Thanks for sharing as well. Okay, let's shift gears because I want to hear some more. I mean, you've been obviously able to share us both like some strategic elements, but also some super tactical learnings. And I would love to get a little bit more into some of your real life experiences, anecdotes, the things that you've worked on. And you've worked on some pretty exciting projects. You've worked in Thomson Reuters, as we mentioned, and now you're at Telia. But they, feature distinctly different roles as we talked about prior to that episode. I'd love to hear about the two, starting with the operational cost projections that you were part of that project at Thomson Reuters.
Yeah, I think Thomson Reuters was probably the most fascinating things you could do in a procurement leader life. It's actually was splitting the company into two. So it was like 20,000 employees going each way. And then I went actually with Refinitiv, which was a financial services arm of Thomson Reuters, and got bought by a private equity. And definitely there was a cost trajectory that was given to us, which was really, the business needs to be running operationally with 650 million less in 18 months' time. And then we were just given everything we were asking for to be able to reach that target. And then as a procurement person, it's actually just a fantastic world to be in, because we had actually some technology legacy that we needed to address, we needed to invest from. We had supplier structure that was complex and built over time for acquisition. And then we knew that we could simplify that a lot. And then there was area like we were calling a sacred cow that we knew we could be addressing, putting more competition. So we basically had the chance to address all of those levers at one time, and then being given any kind of support you could think of, from shareholder to stakeholder to money to people to whatever we would need would be given to us to drive costs down in that very small amount of time.
Primary learnings during that period?
Agility, execution focus. I think it was really what it was about. It's like relentless focus on execution. You really needed things to be delivered quickly, like no closed door hurdles were just need to be removed as fast as possible. So we built actually extremely fast escalation paths if we were actually struggling to deliver any pieces of the puzzle. So really that's a key learning. That focus on execution has been critical into achieving it.
Yeah, I heard recently in a podcast, the difference between great leaders are those that, don't just sit and think about the plan, but they execute upon it, right? Taking an idea to execution in a shorter period of time than the rest of the market. That's why they're the greatest leaders that there are, right? I'm curious about how do you keep that sense of execution and focus in a business, because people get comfortable, right? I mean, how do you continue to re-energize and rejuvenate that feeling in a business?
And I think that's probably what was easy in the Refinitiv Thomson Reuters case, because there was a burning platform. It was like there was no choice. It was either we were succeeding and doing it, otherwise somebody else will come and do it for us. So that makes it a lot easier. Now, when you are not such an environment, and as I said, it doesn't happen very often, you've got such burning platform, is actually find what will be the trigger, what's in it for the people really, and keep them passionate and motivated and energized by what they need to be delivering. And sometimes it's actually because it's putting people in the right spot, in the right project, because they have a passion for that area. It's as well, how do you convince stakeholder that's actually important for them, for their business? It will help them to succeed. So you definitely need to spend more time to keeping that energy up. It will not happen by itself.
Super insights. Okay, let's transition then to your role today at Telia. You've been brought in to drive to professionalize and drive efficiencies in the procurement organization in certain ways. Tell us a bit about what's going on there right now. I mean, the things that are some of the challenges that you're taking on and some of the successes that you're seeing.
I think we definitely have. I came in an organization which was already relatively mature. It's actually not coming from scratch. It was building from the existing. Now, one thing actually was on focus when actually we looked at the maturity was two things. First, the need to create that center of excellence. And the second one was definitely to focus on automation and process optimization. Telia was actually having a lot of people involved into all kind of processes. And I think we were not leveraging technology enough, automation enough. And we were making things more complicated. Can I just
pause there? Sorry to jump in.
Please do.
Do you believe that that's a bit Swedish, that there were so many people involved in all of the processes? Just curious. Cultural?
Culturally, I think generally Nordic communities like consensus. And if you want consensus, you need to involve people definitely into any decisions.
Yeah.
I think there is a bit as well about being risk adverse. They like things to be extremely structured. And in French, we are saying having belt and suspenders. And I think we are trying to move away from that to say, well, maybe a belt is enough and you don't need all those controls and checks. And
Interesting. Okay. Now I cut you off there. I want to hear more. What are some of the successes that you guys have seen in some of the big projects that you're taking on?
I think for me, because we focused quite a lot on how to transition from a model where we had a lot more people than we currently have, is really how do we ensure we give our employee the right tools to be able to manage low risk, low value activities by themselves. So we actually digitalize the process to do RFQs, to put terms and conditions in place. So we put a lot of effort in digitalization early on to say, well, there's a volume of work that was done by sourcing that we need you to take care on. And I think it's an area that worked really well. We've partnered with two technology firms, and we built actually a process that's actually automated a lot of that. That's been taking quite a lot of work away from us.
Yeah, very exciting. What are some of the results that you've seen from the work that you've been doing?
I think we definitely, first, probably nothing collapsed. Everything works, which is already good because we actually took, Telia, and it's no secret, went through a significant headcount reduction up to 15% for the whole group, 40+% in the group function. And we had to adjust what we were doing to make sure that we could actually keep delivering to our end customers. And I think that's probably the first thing. The first success is right now, I think we still have a level of procurement activities which mitigate risk, which manage cost, which maintain cash flow. So everything that's high risk, high value is still performed optimally. Everything which is low risk, low value is self-service, automatized, and it's under control. So I think that's probably the main success factor right now is we can deliver as much value as we were before with a much smaller organization.
What does that do to a team's culture? Because I mean, consolidation is a tough thing for anybody to be able to deal with, right? Or downsizing, right? How do you ensure that you keep the team motivated during times like that?
And I have to say, I've got people that deeply care, which is really, really good. I think they were extremely sad when they saw some of their colleagues leave. But I think generally people want to work for Telia, enjoy working for Telia. I think we've been a really good employer, and they know they've been empowered to take decisions. They do think that they are passionate about. So really refocusing them. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time and energy. And I just went around, explain the change, answer question. And it's something which actually I keep doing right now. But I think refocusing them was probably almost easier than I thought it would be. Definitely there was a hit last year when we went through restructuring, but people quickly went above that and refocused on, actually, where do we go in the next 1 to 3 years? What's our vision? What's our objectives? How could we support the business? So really that's, we went above that relatively quickly, probably quicker than I was expecting.
Well, I think that as a leader, of course, being able to give direction, give that vision, give that mission, very clearly to people of what is the 1 to 3 year plan, what is the 3 to 5 year plan, right? And why changes are being made allows people to be, again, refocused and focus on efficiency, right? In a totally different way. And I think that gets to their core, it gets to their purpose, it gets to their motivators as well individually. So I think that that's important.
Yeah. And involve them in those conversations as well. I think we had a 3 years plan, and then we are just building the next roadmap, and then we are asking them, basically, we are connecting with all of our sourcing and supply chain employees to say, well, what do you see in your area? What's your challenges? What's actually drive your workload up? What's actually administrative in your day-to-day task? And then you actually build as well from that to say, well, then there is actually coming from the initial, well, it's like doing the maturity assessment again and saying, what's actually our next wave of transformation, so you could do a better job. You can actually focus on where you actually add value versus filling up a form, basically, or doing something admin you don't like. So it's really as well about that.
Great insights. Okay, you've had a long career that's far from over, but if you were to break down your time in both Thomson Reuters, which then also broke out Refinitiv from that, and now your time at Telia, if you were going to break down your career into a few chapters and take away a learning from each of them, what would you say?
I think if I look at my sort of early career, it was really building that strong knowledge base, is really those foundational skills, is learning how to interact, behave, listen. So you actually build an expertise that people will be willing to pay you for. Probably. Then after that, I think when I moved up as a manager or leader, I moved in roles where I managed team internationally. So from Argentina to Japan, from US to India. So I had a huge diversity of team members. I think I've learned actually a lot around that, on how to motivate people, what's in it for them. How do you actually build a collective culture from such a diverse team? So that was definitely something around that cross-functional collaboration was actually something which I got a lot actually within Thomson Reuters. I mentioned briefly Refinitiv, the sort of execution focus is what I would remember, is that, and you said that a little bit, we can all be great at putting plans together, but delivering on the plan makes a difference. So that's something I definitely gained during that time. Focus on execution, deliver. That's what's going to make a difference. And then right now, I think in my current role is really because of the changes we went through, with that ability to inspire teams, to drive change, to build up their motivation, to engage them in a different cultural environment again, to actually be able to keep creating value with Telia, even though they saw a lot of their colleagues leaving last year.
Fantastic insights. Thank you so much for taking the time to be able to spend, a moment in your day with our listeners and myself, to be able to drop some knowledge and really give some both tactical but also really strategic views from what it is to be a CPO and supply chain leader in a global business. We really appreciate it as well, Nicolas. Before I let you go, I would love to do a quick fire round, as we do with a lot of our guests. Anything and everything that has nothing to do with procurement or supply chain, if that's okay with you. A few quick questions. I want a one word or a one sentence answer. That's all we're looking for here. Yes. Sound like a plan?
Sounds
cool.
Like a plan.
Fantastic. Do you have a book or a podcast that you're listening to? Can be professional, can be private, that you would suggest to our listeners?
I am actually a passionate reader, and I think anything and everything that comes from AI to actually romance to anything. So I wouldn't say that I would recommend something. I would just recommend keep reading. I think even if it's newspaper, you always get something out of it.
Great. When it comes to your home country, which is Switzerland, correct by saying so?
No, it's France actually, but that's by the border. Yes, it's by the border of Switzerland. So I come from...
Now, where are you from in France?
From a small ski resort called Morzine, which is about 30 minutes from Geneva. So it's by the border of Switzerland.
Well, this makes me even happier for the question, because I didn't want to label you as French and then you were Swiss. Apologies, I didn't do my homework. But I was thinking to ask, what would you recommend as your favorite Swiss dish, But instead, what is your favorite French dish?
But I'm still going to go with something which is actually from that part, including Switzerland. It's like the cheese fondue. It's probably one of the things I like the most. And that's probably one of the things I miss the most in Sweden.
Okay, very nice, very nice. We're actually going to eat fondue tomorrow evening with our team that's going to be in a workshop. So I'll have to tell you how it is and see if it's up to standards to provide you with that. Okay, last question. If you weren't going to be a procurement leader, what would you be?
I'd probably be in the wine business. I'm passionate by wine, so either winemaker, but that would be definitely around wine something.
Okay, then we have to ask one more question. A bottle of wine that you can tip about that everybody needs to go and try.
Oh, that can be an endless list. And then if you don't think about price, the one that actually I had, which was a champagne, and that's a champagne which is called Krug Clos du Mesnil. That was actually fabulous. It was probably the one that I enjoyed the most. Now, there's one thing which is important to enjoy. I think you need the right people, and I think it's what makes the difference as well. I think a good bottle is important, but then who you drink it with is even more important.
And I could say the same about the guests on our podcast. Thank you so much for being a fantastic guest. It was fantastic to share this moment with you. And is there anything that you would like to tell those that are listening if they want to get in touch or be a part of any networks that you're working in?
Oh, please, yes, do. If they want to connect on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm always happy to interact, connect, and have conversation. Anything I talked about today or anything they want to talk about generally, yes, please come in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicolas, for being on today's episode.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam.